Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity and Love, incredible experts the world over who have walked a certain path of transformation, sometimes inner discovery, sometimes a near death experience. Actually, the record on the show is 5, although we've had 3 a couple times. You don't have to go through all that for all of us, but they've gone through some sort of a journey in which they've often decided to give service to others. We have healers, a White House physician to the US president, Rear Admiral retired, not a Navy SEAL, but a Delta Force operator, youngest ever admitted, who happens to be a naturopath. New York Times bestsellers, Super Soul Sunday guests, Watkins 100 folks. Today, coming back to us from Canada, absolutely one of my favorite guests, one of the most favorite people I've met on this journey in the last, I think it's been 13 years for me. And I've got to admit, I read his thesis. I think it's a PhD thesis about his time in Africa, his time with the Lakota Sioux. Back when I was popping, freaking out, I hadn't met angels yet, but I knew something was up. I was grabbing every bit of material on the internet. And that's when I first reached out to him, like maybe a decade ago. And he was probably like, hey, who is this? We eventually got to chat. And I view him as a friend. I'm very pleased to introduce Jonathan Ellerby, PhD in Canada. He's back on the show. Jonathan, welcome back.
What a generous introduction. And it's always great to be with you. You're a spiritual experience yourself.
We were playing around on air for the audience and we had a good time. And I've got to actually give a little bit of his resume, his bio. He was the former spiritual director at Canyon Ranch. He has a long resume, so I'm going to skip a lot, but he is an author. He's got books behind him. This is one of his books, Return to the Sacred. Exactly. Thank you. I made him do that. He's also was head of he had a spiritual director position at the Althea Center. He was at Spirituality in Practice, helping them out. He's a healer. He's a person who gives great advice. He pays attention. He spent like 11 years training, paying attention to, trying to learn the ways of the Lakota Sioux. He was taken under um, a wise man's arm or wing and shown some of the ways. He's traveled all over the world, a lot of countries. I think it was up to 30 or 40. He described those the last time he was on the show. We're going to have him back as much as he wants to come on. But I had to mention all this. He's, if there was a word, it would be sacred and paying attention and honoring that path. Okay, Jonathan, that was your long intro.
Pretty good. I don't know who that was really about, but I'll take it.
Yeah, and hey, look, last time I'm still like kind of reverberating around. You shared a lot of stuff. The owl story, your time in
Yeah.
Africa, this and that. Can you take us somewhere first before we get into any of the usual topics people cover on podcasts like this? What happened and where and when? What was significant about it?
Yeah, funny. Yeah, I something did pop into my head while we were having a little pre-show meditation. So I don't know how long to make this story. I want to be mindful of our time. But I had finished guess it was my master's. No, that's not right. Finished my bachelor's, my honors degree, and I had some time between the end and whatever was next. I was going into a master's program, and I wanted to do some traveling. I'd always felt drawn to the Amazon since I was a kid, and so it's actually a long story, but I'm gonna just hit some highlights. So, funny thing happened. This was quite a while ago for people listening in 2024. This was more than 24 years ago. And, or no, it was about 24, 25 years ago. And it was New Year's Eve day. And so I was trying to think, like, my program wrapped up that fall. And what am I going to do? How am I going to have this experience? I don't really have a lot of money for this. And so I just remember I was visiting my mom and I was sitting on a computer. Things were all dial up, I think back then, really slow. And I just kind of put in like some weird combination of words that just expressed what I wanted to experience. It was like Amazon jungle, traditional healing, travel. And I get this hit. I click on this web page right away. It's like it's not even a web page. Like it looks like a data file. It's all white. Looks like maybe someone was going to build a web page and didn't, but there was a phone number. And being like a lunatic, I just called it, right? So I'm not even, this is not a word of exaggeration. It's like 3:30 on December 31st, and I'm dialing the number off a page that's got almost no information on it. And somebody picks up and she says, Amazon promise. Uh, she actually said it in a different kind of way. She was more like, Amazon promise? And I was like, is there someone do you run trips to the Amazon? And she was like, who is this? And I said, well, my name's Jonathan and I got your name off your website. She's like, what website? This is my phone number. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you mean. This is my phone number. She's like, look, we're on vacation. It's the holidays. I came into the office to get something. I have a personal line here. We don't post it. How did you call me? Like my husband's waiting in the car. Like, I don't know she's telling me. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I got a website that's not a website and a phone number that's apparently not a public phone number, but I'm interested in going to the Amazon. And she's like, well, okay, we do that. And she's like, but we're medical expeditions and we only take like experts who bring resources to the community. So we take dentists and doctors and nurses. And I said, oh, well, you would like, so I can't go. And she's like, well, I don't know. What do you do? I'm like, well, I work with, studying with traditional healers and this and that. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah. And is that weird? Like, I don't know if I can help. She said, no, no, we work with traditional healers in the Amazon and we always need a liaison worker between the shamans and the doctors to kind of explain she's like, let's talk. Like, give me your number and I'll call you in a week. So that was a crazy beginning. Now let's fast forward. It's I don't know, a month up the river, super cool experience. Amazon promise, check them out. Still do great work. And but one of the first things we had to do was go for a cultural training, learn some of the traditions and practices and things to say and not say. And we went to this little village deep in the jungle. It was near a town called Iquitos that you have to fly or boat into. And and one of the things that happened at the end of that day was that they invited us, the healers and people of the village invited us to attend a ceremony. Well, turns out it was an ayahuasca ceremony. Now, for the record, this was 25 plus years ago. This was before this was a fad, and this was before this was a thing. And I was like, oh, okay, I've heard of that. Now, we were told, because it's a medical expedition, no one's participating because we're just here to learn. This is not like one of those trips. Now, probably everyone would do it. So we went, sat in the jungle, three old dudes drinking the little medicine and smoking these huge black tobacco cigarettes. And they're just basically singing and praying and singing and praying. I mean, you're just sitting in a little hut in the middle of the jungle. That's all that's happening for hours. So one by one, our team eventually leaves because they're like, well, okay, we get the idea. And I, who had been involved in many traditional ceremonies in other parts of the world, was like, well, I can't take the medicine, but I can pray and I can meditate. Maybe I can connect. Like, why not? Right? It's important for listeners to hear. You don't need ayahuasca necessarily to go where ayahuasca can take you. And some people are just tripping like that all the time, like Michael here.
Thank you.
Woohoo! So I stayed up with them, prayed and meditated. At one point, really like, I don't know what it was, but like 3 a.m, they stopped singing, and then a flashlight clicks. And then you could tell they're like looking to see who the hell's out there. And then they're talking in Spanish or Quechua or whatever it was. And the next morning, when it was all over, one of the ayahuasqueros, the healers, comes over to me and says, in very broken English, like, we want to make the ceremony with you. And I was like, well, I can't. And they're like, well, come back. So we do the 4-week expedition or 5-week or whatever it was, which was super cool. And then at the end, I find a way back. I don't know how I got there, but I find a way back. And it's a long walk through the jungle, blah, blah, blah. I'm the only white dude. It's just really a few families, like a very small little village setting. And I stayed for a week. And I'll tell you, from what I hear of retreats now, this ain't no retreat. This was like pretty hardcore. So immediately they changed my diet. Like it's like fasting, and then you can only eat fruit, and then it's like fasting, and then you can have some fish, and then like fasting, and then during the day, it's just they're doing purification ceremonies, and that's a whole story where they took me to a deeper into the jungle and put me on a
Ooh,
this is actually
tell us about this. Take some time for the flavor.
are
This
you
is like
sure?
no one else can ever tell this story.
Oh, this is actually there's a little story before the end of the story. So this is a great part of the story where they take me, this one guy takes me deeper and deeper and deeper into the jungle, and there's a little creek, huge clay pot, and it's filled with water and flowers. And he sits me down on this old stump, and I'm just wearing swim trunks at this point. And he basically, starts smudging me with traditional whatever uh, plants and herbs. So washes me down with smoke. Then he takes the floral water and he's washing me with that. Smells really good. And then I don't know where it came from, but he's got this huge pot full of muck, and he starts like covering me in all the muck, and he says like, "You stay, like I'll be back." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, what do I okay. I mean, and I believe in these things and I've been a part of these things, but I'm still like a white dude from Winnipeg, Canada. I'm like, really? Are you sure you don't want to like stay with me for a little? Like, I think this is like really the jungle. So maybe you want to stick around. And he just leaves. And like the last thing he says is like something like, like, don't move, like just stay there. I'm like, don't, what the what? And the funny thing is, this muck starts to harden. And it's like, yeah, I'm just now like entombed in this muck. And the funny thing, this is the funny part of the story to me, is I'm like sitting and I'm breathing, and there's moments where it's like really beautiful. It's very transcendent and peaceful, and the jungle's like, absorbing me and all this magic. And you see some really incredible birds. And then I see a flash of blue on the ground, and I look down and I thought it was maybe a butterfly. It's a poison dart frog. And they're covered in a neurotoxin that's really dangerous. And this tiny little frog just like blip, blip, just starts hopping towards me. And I'm sort of thinking like, because my feet, not every inch of me covered, my feet are kind of bare. I'm like, oh no, oh no, 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 like do not hop on and it just gets closer. And finally I'm like, like trying to blow it away or pray it away. Anyway, it came, I don't know, 4 inches from my feet. I was pretty much ready to get up. And then it kind of went off in a different direction, which was great. So that's kind of a funny part of the story. But the thing that I wanted to share with the audience, aside from this part of the story, was that we then did the ceremony after all these days of preparation, 4 nights in a row. And
Hey, can I ask a question for viewers?
yeah.
How'd you get the mud off? What happened? Just give us a minute on that.
Oh, so he did come back like
Yeah.
hours later.
Yeah.
And then I think he used more water and softened it. And then I just had to rub it off and use the water. But yeah, he came back. Thank God. And my skin was silky smooth. So all these forms of purification. But that's kind of like an interesting thing for people to hear about, because in the West, so let's take a moment and just sort of teach out of this. In the West, like there's a lot in this story. We feel like you pay your money, you show up to your retreat, you get your experience, you got a nice room, done. Go back to work on Monday. And I'm not saying there isn't value in that. There is value in that. If that's all you can do it. Like, absolutely. But there, I mean, the first few days, I'm like skinning poles and helping them set up, a hut or something. There's work involved, and diet and fasting. Like, it wasn't comfortable. It was exciting and exotic and beautiful. But I mean, I'd probably, if someone had written it down, I would have paid not to do it. And even the first night of the ceremony, I mean, people talk about the vomiting. I don't remember vomiting. And I'm sorry because I don't want to disrespect your show, but I'm telling you, the next morning I went to the bathroom for about an hour. I think everything inside myself, from my earwax on down, gone. So the point of that is that in really all the older spiritual traditions, purification is a part of receiving. Purification is a part of ceremony. Purification is part of preparation. And we don't really relate to that. Like for a lot of us today, it's hard enough just to put our phone down, let alone not have a drink or stop eating whatever junk food or whatever it is. I mean, purification's pretty hardcore in some of these traditions. Now, not everyone has to be that pure, but the people that are doing the spiritual work are typically following some kind of exotic lifestyle. Sometimes wonderful, sometimes joyful. I mean, usually joyful, but just not always physically what you'd sign up for. So that's worth calling attention to. But let's now fast forward to, I can't remember, I think it was the third night. And something really interesting happened that I just think is a note to end on. There's lots of stories here, but let's finish with this part. So we take the medicine. Again, it's just me and these three old dudes. And sure enough, there is a transitional moment, right? Praying, meditating, growing quiet, and all of a sudden, for me anyway, a kind of inner visionary world begins to open up. And for me, it was very energetic, more than it was images or shapes or beings that I could discern with form. And there was this one particular moment that really stood out. And I felt this force in the jungle, like circling the hut, because it's like a hut in the middle. I mean, everything's in the middle of the jungle, but further from the village, a palapa roof, thatched that roof, posts and some benches. There's really nothing. And I mean, all old stuff, handmade from the jungle. And so I'm there and I'm concentrating and feeling and seeing and receiving and traveling and all this stuff. But all of a sudden I feel like a presence in the jungle. Like it feels like something's there, like it's a thing. And it's kind of circling the cabana. And then it comes in. And the feeling was that it was like a glowing golden ball of light. Like that's how I experienced it. And it came in front of me, and it was sort of like sitting in front of the sun. I mean, obviously not the sun because you'd be incinerated, but you get the idea. Gorgeous, shining golden light. And I could feel it like right in my chest. And then at some point it moved on. So there's some sort of transmission. And what's interesting about the story is that the next morning, one of the healers, because you're all there like together, but you're not together. You're all off on your own journeys, I guess. Or so I thought. Right? So that's like a fun part of the story. So he comes over to me in the morning after I wake up, and he's like, gosh, I wish I could remember exactly what he said, but he's like, we saw it. We saw it. Did you see it? And I was like, I don't know. What did you see? And he said, the Jaguar. I was like, the Jaguar? You saw the What What do you mean? And he said it circled our whatever he called the space. And yeah, man. And it came in, and he said we watched it sit. Think about that, right? So for people with the Western mind, he said we watched it come in and sit in front of you, and it got up on its hind legs and it revealed its chest and had a brilliant rainbow. And I was like, yeah, I felt that. But isn't it amazing? I share the story, I don't know, because it popped into my head, but for your listeners, Like, what a phenomenal story of shared spiritual experience. And I think that in the West, even though people listen to you because they want to believe in angels or they think they've had an experience, we still doubt it, even though we know it. And so you hear a story like this, and it's like, dang, this wasn't just Jonathan's brain, right, freaking out on some neurotoxin. No, this was an opening to a dimension of perception that we shared. And we saw the same thing. Now, we saw it in different forms because I perceived it energetically and they could see its form, which is interesting. But the description was the same, circling the cabin, sitting in front of me, radiating the light. Exactly the same story, just perceived from different vantage point. And I think that's something that we've been disconnected from in the West. And we diminish these sorts of phenomena by thinking that they're important, but they're psychological. They're important, but they're not real in a physical sense. Well, this was not a symbolic experience. That shit happened. So that's the story that came to me.
That's an incredible story. So incredible. We're going to go back to it in about 1 second. I'm going to do something early. It's called blowing sage, but I got to light it first or I'll just be blowing air. You're going to catch sage in Canada. I think we just did this before the show. I think we've done this before. And don't blame Canada. Don't blame angels. Let them do their jobs. Ask angels to get you out of your head into your heart. Catch that sage, catch flowers, catch ocean. But if you want to hear the jaguar growl in a happy way or purr, or whatever a jaguar does, hear it. You might have to close your eyes for this and allow for it.
All right. And are
Catch
we all
even,
doing this? Me and all the
yeah,
listeners?
yeah. Catch some Amazon
All
jungle
right,
for
let's do
you
that together.
because we're going to go back to the Amazon jungle in a half second. Can I have you peek at the jaguar photo just for 1 second? I don't get any credit because I didn't hold it up early enough when it was just a golden ball before you said the word jaguar. Hear that you have permission to do this. When your eyes are closed and anybody at home wants to breathe more through the mouth, it's just a way to get the brain out of the way. Have the jaguar come in when your eyes are shut. I'm blowing smoke on you. Catch the smoke, but catch more Amazon as if you're right back on that bench. See the golden light. Be in the hut. Have it circle, but let it slowly transition to the jaguar how he saw it and how you saw it through your soul's lens. And then let the jaguar come into the hut and catch the rest of it. I'm going to go quiet. We're going to go quiet on the show for 30 seconds here, but have that opening and do the rainbow light. Breathe through your mouth if you would. Yep. And that's just turning the volume up for folks at home. And we're going to go quiet. 30 seconds of quiet. People can put their hand out into the room wherever they're sitting with their eyes shut, as if you're dribbling a basketball, but keep your hands still. Feel the jaguar walk by underneath your hand. It'll be wiry, short, tough fur, but friendly and warm. Jaguar is always on your team. Fluidity and many other definitions. See the rainbow light. And then see your hand reaching out to touch the rainbow light. And catch a little oneness with the jaguar. And when you're ready, if you don't mind coming back and describing an extra dimension to it from back then that maybe you didn't realize you had, that now you know you went full circle and had a good one.
Yeah.
You can even hear one of the men come in and put a hand on your shoulder or a whisper, but close your eyes one more time. Let one of them who's a funky, I don't know the word, he doesn't mind reaching out, whether he's alive or on the other side. Hear him just whisper a few words. And then I'm going to snub this out because I've had it going for a while. Share what you could share. It was one of the best stories I'll ever hear for the rest of my life. So, wow. And you couldn't paint the picture more for us than to just spend more time on this whatever way feels sacred to you. You are like literally, if I had to find a way to describe you, you carry the embers of sacred and keep them alive. I like that description. There's got to be an Indian or some sort of way to shorten that. Ember bearer. But okay, Jonathan, when you're ready, come back, talk to us more. What just happened? What happened in the hut that night? Give us a little more flavor of, and I'll try to do like a fancy podcast show where they make it terror, fear oriented, which it's not. It's all love. You were being
No, I
stalked.
gotta tell you before I share with the listeners,
Yeah,
I think you're for when I want them to hear me say this to you.
yeah.
I mean, your format's really evolved, and there's so much more interaction and like transmission during the interview. This is awesome. I think people,
It's the only
I think
show.
people,
But I got
I
to go
think,
back to traditional shows. The Jaguar was stalking all of you, and you were all finished. It was jigs up. The jig was up. No cops could come in, animal control, nothing. It was just you and the Jaguar. I'm kidding. It's all love. It's golden light. But now take us back to then, or take us to what just happened now.
all right, all right, all right. I
You've
will,
got
but
more
I want
insight
to, I
now.
just want to thank you for bringing something experiential to people.
Thank you. Oh, and
Thank
thank you for the compliment. I need all the compliments I can get. Thank you.
I think it's really cool. So, I got something actually. Got something from the elder, and I got something from the Jaguar, which is so the Jaguar, the guidance that I received that is for all of us was to feel the fearlessness of the Jaguar. And then there was a moment of moving in the jungle as the Jaguar and feeling the way the Jaguar travels in day and night without fear. It's not a fearful animal, but here's the important part of the lesson, which is as I absorb that, you know, like because be fearless is another way of saying trust. It's another way of saying let go. It's another way of saying like life is safe. The universe is safe if you let it be. And what I perceived to share through the Jaguar, and I think this is really important for especially for Western folks to hear, it is not fearless because of its power or aggression or capacity to defend itself. And that's, I think we idealize animals. Oh, the lion is fearless, the jaguar is fearless. And I think the Western mind thinks because they're not going to take shit from anyone, because they're fierce. No, that's not why they're fearless. The jaguar is fearless because it is one with the jungle. The jaguar, so listen to that. The jaguar is fearless because the jungle is its home, because its senses are open. There's nothing to fear. It's only listening, learning, taking in cues. When it's time to go, it goes. When it's time to eat, it eats. When it's time to fight, it fights. But it's not moving through the world aggressively. That's a human behavior. And it's somewhat learned and conditioned and a trauma response and so on. And so when people hear that the Jaguar is asking you today to be fearless in your life, or maybe you're facing an issue or something at work or something in a relationship, it's not saying be fearless because you're mighty or you're going to defend yourself. It's because there's nothing to defend yourself from. You're just moving through the world like everyone else, including the people that are difficult, including the people you're scared of. So the jaguar is at one with the jungle. And so it perceives nothing to be afraid of, only information, only clues and cues. What's next? And it doesn't really think much further than that. Now, just a quick side, and then I'll tell you what the guy said. It reminds me of the current fascination with horror movies, which apparently is now the number one trending style of film for, I don't know, 5 years or something. It's not my thing. But if you think about what makes a scary movie scary, yes. I mean, even though I don't watch them, yeah, there's scary stuff. They show killers and monsters or whatever, gruesome things. But a huge amount of any scary movie is in the mind. It's the anticipation of what's next. It's the music that they're playing. It's your assumption that the character is about to be killed or eaten or dismembered. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because this message about being fearless is about really recognizing the way our divisive minds create fear for us. We create stories of againstness. And as long as we do that, there will be things to fear because you live in an oppositional world and you're seeing your boss, your coworker, your partner oppositionally. So, of course, it activates that defense mechanism. But when you see everyone is just kind of bumbling through life, trying to figure it out and make it to the end, it feels different. Now, what the elder said, because he was saying something I didn't understand, it was like in another language, and then somehow it kind of like fixed itself and translated. And it was basically the reminder to be in the world, but not of the world. So relate to the dramas of your life in a way that allows you to learn from them, but don't believe that any of them are real. You know, the kind of drama in the break room and the drama between you and your kids or the drama between you and your checkbook, most of that's living in your mind, you know, and it's so powerful and important. Like the Jaguar, stay connected to the oneness, stay connected to that higher dimension of who you are, and then accept that that higher dimension is here in a human form for a little while. And yeah, there's drama. Like that's part of the shtick, but it doesn't last, right? It's like a roller coaster. You're going to be off it soon, no matter how scary it gets, or if you puke or close your eyes. At some point, you're going to say, "What? It's over? Let's go get something to eat." So that's what I got.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. I got one last exercise for you with Jaguar. Here's Jaguar, a final bit of listening, active, in repose. What are you hearing from Jaguar to add a cherry to the sundae?
Oh, okay. I'm going to close my eyes here. I'm going to look and then close.
Either way. But breathe, maybe hand off your face. That's up to you. But at home, definitely, folks, just breathe,
Yeah.
relax the body. And anybody who wants soft fur against their cheek can get it. A little wiry, but not against your cheek. It'll be soft. Hand, it'll be tough.
Okay, so I have to say this quickly before I forget it. Live by the energy of your life, not by the activity of your mind.
Oh my God.
Live by the energy of your life, not by the activity of your mind. And the repose of the jaguar shows us that they are not reactive creatures, but they are alert. And so as we can also, they remain open to energy. I mean, I've done a lot of guiding in wilderness settings and especially in Africa. I mean, animals are never 100%, tuned out, right? There's always a sense that's kind of checking for danger, but they relax, they chill, they sleep. Um, but they're just open. Their senses are just open. So they're not paranoid. When I take people to Africa, that half the time we see lions, they're just sleeping. It's just a bunch of sleeping lions. If there's something to be afraid of, or pardon me, not afraid of, respond to, oh, they're ready. But you don't often find nervous animals, especially predators. Um, you know, Deer and antelope and those sorts of things, they're watchful. They're watchful. They're more careful. But the point is, live by the energy of life, not by the activity of the mind, means be careful how much storytelling you're doing about what you're living, what you're experiencing, what you think other people mean by what they said or what they did, and see if you can stay a little more grounded. It's weird, right? Because one of the most sort of a redundant use of language, but one of the most spiritual, whatever that means, ways to live is to actually just stay very grounded. right? And you know, like your humor and all the things you bring to people in your interviews, I think that's what it's about, right? I mean, we want to connect to higher dimensions. We want to be open to other levels, but we want to be open in a relaxed way, in a receiving way, in a responsive way, not in a clinging, trying, making it happen sort of way. And to conclude, you know, the funny thing about wildlife, and I have been fortunate to spend a lot of time observing big predators, particularly in Africa. I mean, there's just like nothing going on like what we see in the movies where it's all tense music and teeth and blood and all this stuff. Most of the life of a predator is like sleeping and sleeping and moving to another place to sleep. And then when it's time to eat, yeah, it's game on. But you know, they'll run, chase something, and you know, if it's too fast or too big, they stop. You know, they don't make an issue out of it. They don't stalk them for the rest of the week. They don't post on social media how wrong or bad they are. They just like try something else. Like life is much simpler when we don't overthink it.
Hmm. All right, one angel for you, Joy. So I don't think we've done any angels on the show. Before the show, we were playing around. We always play around a little bit. Here's an angel named Joy, and she's the emotion joy for folks. Pink ball light. She's a constant. And if you want to put your hand out and feel the vibe, you can breathe more and catch flowers in the air, but get something private. Get something you didn't know that you're not going to share out loud about the Jaguar hut trip. Yeah, and if you're yawning, that's a total release. Good job. Get something so private and have any part of it filled in that you didn't even know about. You're not going to share this part out loud. Let her give you a little tidbit so you go, wow. You can just say wow out loud or got it when you're ready. And then with your hand that we can't see, if you could put your hand out like you're getting $50 off camera. Yep. And you're not getting $50. Sorry to break it to you. But when you're ready, have her show up as light in your hand, pink light, of course, and feel the electricity, the lightness, the sparkle, the whatever I'm supposed to say. Breathe through your mouth more. It'll happen faster. When you hear ready, look down, see the light in your hand. And then when you want to enjoy it, but then bring it into your heart for a hug. So you'll open your eyes when you hear ready or a kiss on the cheek or a jaguar roar saying, dude, it's time. And you'll see pink light in your hand, enjoy it for just a little bit, and then bring it into your heart. And people at home can do this if you want to do two hands, cup it like you're in the shower catching water. Great place to do it is a shower because you're getting water all over you. You're letting go. Hard to be in a shower and be uptight. And Jonathan, we're not going to lose him off the screen. So what just happened, Jonathan? What just happened?
What just happened?
Yeah, what just happened?
I thought I was supposed to get something private.
Oh, yeah, no. Actually, yeah, keep it private, but tell us abstractly without revealing anything private. I mean, this stuff's got to be private for folks. But what just happened? Did you
Oh,
connect with an angel?
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting, you know, when I connect, sometimes it's very visual, shapes and journeys and things like that. And sometimes it's like more energetic, either a feeling or a seeing. I think it's, if I can make a comment, I think it's important for people that listen to you or watch you that they remember that we don't all get it the same way. I don't think. I don't know what your experience is, but sometimes it's different depending on the day. And then sometimes it's just different for different people. Like some people are super visual. Like you've always got great visuals and smells and all these sorts of things. And I just know that over the years working with a lot of people, they'll say, well, what if I just get an energy or what if I just get a feeling? And I'm like, well, if it taught you something, if it gave you something, yeah, like embrace that and don't undermine it because there are some people who may be very visual but don't get it very often. And then there's many of you out there right now who, you know, you don't get it the way it is in books and you don't get it the way Michael gets it or I get it, but you're sensing energy all the time. So pay attention, you know, pay attention. And the way I received that angel was very much just really kind of like a soft cloud of light today. It wasn't like a winged, I don't know, being, right? and that was beautiful, and it was fine. I didn't need to like make it something else.
Hey, now you're a speaker, you're an author, you're a show host. You know how to wrap up a show. Do me a favor, take us through 3 or 4 actual points that we would have normally covered. Have we never mentioned the Jaguar? Give us 3 or 4 insights that maybe you came prepared to talk about that had flashed around. It could be another story. Probably not another hour-long story in the Amazon jungle as good as the
Yeah.
Jaguar with rainbow light at the very end. That was pretty incredible. I don't know if anyone ever, at least for the next 200 episodes, is going to top that. Not that it's a competition, like you were just saying. Everything is different, but we'll have to
Well,
put a laurel somewhere on the wall up here for you for the Jaguar story.
all right. Well, I'm going to use the closing moments. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, which is promote something and then
Oh,
connect
yeah, promote.
messages. So I have a new book out. It's called The 7 Gateways of Spiritual Experience. And it's funny because I just saw something on the back of it that I didn't even notice until now, which is really funny because it's my own book. That's embarrassing. It says, Discover the Geography of the Soul. And the thing about that statement is what the book does is it takes you through 7 types of spiritual experience. And if you're interested in growing your capacity for intuition or awareness, it's helpful to have a sense of what's out there, what you can experience, what people do experience. And I described in great detail what each type of experience feels like with stories and firsthand accounts. And I think the reason why that's valuable, and this is sort of transitioning into the take-home lessons, is because people see what they pay attention to. They pay attention to are, uh, what they can pay attention to. In other words, if you don't know something exists, it's hard to pay attention to it. And there's a sort of selective vision that happens, right? Like if you get a puppy for the first time, all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, there's a pet store down the street. I never noticed. Scientists are beginning to believe that this sort of selective perception is because the human mind perceives so much information every moment. It is built to only register what feels relevant and useful because there's just too much coming in. So, if you immerse yourself in spiritual studies, listen to these kinds of podcasts, talk about what you heard or saw or felt with friends, read things that connect you to that kind of world. Have a daily practice, regular practices, regular community. Then what you're going to find is that not only will your energy body begin to change, not only will your spiritual intelligence begin to open and awaken, but your brain will cooperate, right? Your neurology will start directing you towards all the opportunities that you feel that other people have that you don't. And so that's a part of the insight I want to leave people with. It's that these things do happen to people by grace and in unexpected moments, but you can cultivate a spiritual life. You can cultivate spiritual connection and you can cultivate spiritual experiences. So when Michael guides something, and check out his other podcasts, do the experience. Don't judge it and build on it, build on it, build on it. Remember, we live in a world that teaches us again and again and again incorrectly that the only things that we can understand or that are worth understanding are the things that are measurable, repeatable, verifiable. Well, that's one type of understanding, but there's all kinds of ways to experience this world. There's all kinds of ways to understand something. And if you think about it, some of the most important skills in your life you were never even taught, and yet you understood them, like learning to walk, like learning to eat or talk or even read. A lot of us do these things because we are around it. We see it. We try it. Not a lot of kids go to walking school. Most kids pull themselves up on something and little by little try what they're seeing, what they're feeling. And in the strange way, I'd say the spiritual world and the spiritual life is like that. Now, the last point. As you open that spiritual world, remember though, this is still your life. And one of the things that comes up in my coaching and counseling work for people doing deep spiritual work is there can be a kind of confusion as magical things are happening and miraculous things that are happening and spiritual guidance is showing up. People start to feel like they have to be they have to give up their power. They have to give up their choices and they have to wait for all the right signs and all the right guidance. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're still driving the car. It's just that your car used to be empty and now you've got Geronimo and the Archangel Michael and, you're driving a bus and it's full of these beautiful beings and they're going to help you and they're going to say, oh yeah, take the turn up here and oh yeah, like stop, I got to take a pee. There you go. But you're still driving. And and that's part of what we're here to experience, choice and empowerment and not giving our choice and empowerment away just because some teacher knows more than we do or somebody else has had a great experience or even just because we've had an encounter of a spirit. We have to take responsibility for our own life path. And maybe that is where I shall end.
I love it. I'm going to hold up one drawing of Geronimo. This is what started it for me at two different points in my life. When I was two in 1970, my dad passed away off of Italy, Navy fighter pilot type F-4 Phantom. It was his time to go. He had just turned 26 on June 7th in 1970, and on June 10th, he was in a crash nighttime off the carrier USS Roosevelt. He always knew he was going to go young. Hundreds of people have met him as a reconciled, unconditional love spirit, or whatever you would call it. My mom passed when I was turning 23. But so my mom gets a military sedan to visit, like you see in the movies, two guys, probably the telegram saying, here's the bad news. And a woman walked these three drawings
Oh,
down to my mom, and they hung over my bed as a kid and in my offices as an adult. But I'll do one. It's a famous author who passed in his 90s 3 or 4 years ago, Jack Davis. University of Georgia has some of his artwork displayed in the museum there. We all know his work from Mad Magazine, and he did the Alfred E. Newman boy drawing. But I'll put Geronimo up for some final listening for you. Get anything private you need. But if you don't mind doing one last boomerang, Geronimo, the drawing version, will do a final reminder for us all that again is another cherry on the Sunday. You gave us a great Sunday, even though it's Thursday today. Here is Geronimo. What are you getting? Jonathan Ellerby in Canada, amazing listener, amazing caretaker for us all. What's Geronimo saying?
the boomerang
Oh, just about anything in life. What's Geronimo
message for
got
the
for
group.
us?
Yeah, the two things that came that I heard quickly, clearly, I don't know if they're connected, but they'll be connected for people listening, obviously. Uh, the first is that everyone's guided. Everyone's guided. We all have, and I think that Geronimo, all the people of his time and his kind, that's how they lived. I mean, they knew that. There was never a question about it. They were born into a world that was guided. They lived and talked about guidance and living among spirits their whole lives. So part of his fearlessness and part of his courageousness was the closeness of the spirit world to to the human world in everyday life. So we're all guided, whether you believe it or not, or think it or not, or have accessed it or not yet. There are the spirits are with us. They're always with us. And then the other word that I heard kind of felt random was boundaries. And I was like, boundaries. And I got this sort of, I don't know, it was maybe more of an energetic exchange. Like, here's someone who has at some level this very deep, soft soul that's, loving and intuitive and connected. But it doesn't mean, you don't pick up, in his case, I don't condone any kind of violence. It doesn't mean you don't defend yourself. It doesn't mean you don't stand for what you believe in. It doesn't mean, right? So to be spiritual, to be guided, to be connected, doesn't mean you become boundaryless. The human experience is boundaried, and part of our power is to bring spiritual knowledge in, and through our boundaries, move it into the world. And he was he represented boundaries in a big way. So anyway, that's what I got.
Incredible. Jonathan Ellerby, Angels, Positivity, and Love, amazing guest. I hope you'll come back again, maybe June-ish of 2025. We'll see. We'll talk off camera. You're incredible. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, sir. It's always my pleasure. Thank you so much.